All right, welcome everyone. It looks like periodically I'll have to hit admit here, so just let me do that on occasion. And welcome, I'm really glad you came. And this is a fun time to do research, and there's so much new we can do and so much more power. So it's like literally happening every day. So I think you might know yesterday, this how fast this happens, they had introduced Claude Sonnet 4.6. And it's specifically designed for exactly the kind of things we want, like sort of working with files, doing analysis and things like that. So, so very cool. And so it's a timely time to join me. So let me just go ahead and get a sense of where you all are at. So if you can go ahead and just go ahead and type a number here on where you're at with research with all these fancy tools. And I will try to keep track of all your notes. So let's see here. Okay, I don't think I'd go as far as 6. You're welcome to pick that option. But Nir, welcome. It sounds like you're really advanced. Awesome. Louisa, just starting. That's great. That's why you're here. Charlotte, welcome. Alex, let's see. Daniel, Adita, cool. Sarah, Brian, okay, lots of folks. Okay, Maxence, okay, I'll do my best to keep up. This is great that we got lots of folks. Alex, wow, that's your inspiration. Well, maybe you'll try a tool called OpenClaw, and you can get even closer to having that that aspiration come a reality. Okay, good. Let me just do one more thing. I'm going to try to, sorry, there's a little bit of fiddling here so that I can make it better for us to work together. So I'm just going to try clicking on one of these things here. Okay, so Alex knows about OpenClaw, and it's not enough, so you need a headset. We need to drill into your brain. Actually, I did research in my PhD with people who actually had surgery, and they had electrodes right on the surface of their brain. So that might be right where you're headed. Okay, cool. Let me just turn this one off. Just be careful. Okay, good. Well, thank you all for joining me. Let me just see. Occasionally, I'll just have to look over here and hit admit. So today, what I wanted to do is really just exactly what this says. I wanted to teach you a little bit of Claude Code for research, and just like what are the core pieces here, and how can you put these to use? So very practical. We're going to do hands-on. I'm going to have stuff that I have a little snippet of what I'm doing for my class, and just try something together. So so very cool. Okay, so let me just go ahead and just give you a sense of why you want to do these sorts of things. So the first thing is just I have found like just an amazing growth in the capabilities I have, and also understanding what is going on in doing analysis with the AI. So I don't have to be, so you know that if you're over here, so if I go like this, and here, I'll keep trying to zoom in as much as I can for you until it's practical. So if I'm doing my analysis, I'm like, you know, start analysis now. And it's thinking, I have to come back to this, and when the next prompt comes, I have to do something else. When the next prompt comes, I have to do something else. I'm sort of like stuck to this, right? So it's you know, maybe I'm working together with this tool, but really what I want to do is I want to have it where it's much more just happens for me in the way I want it to. And so that's where we want to move from being essentially helpers of our AI to orchestrators of our AI. And so, for example, the example I've got here is just you could have for writing, like say you're doing secondary research, you could have a researcher, a writer, have an editor that gives comments, and then maybe the researcher and the writer, you know, come back and make iterations, and then it, you know, the editor might look at it again, and then it's satisfied. So that's a much more sophisticated flow, and that would take a lot of you sort of going back and forth. And so I want to show you how to automate that a lot more. So very cool. David asked if there's a handout. I will actually just share my slides when we send out the link with a recording, usually like tomorrow. So no worries there. Okay, cool. And let me just keep it going. So I don't know if you know, I actually do teach a class on, excuse me, called AI for Customer Research. And it was very cool. This one worked out. I started it in February last year, and this it wound up being one of the Maven top 100, so very cool. And it so got a good response. And this is the sort of first in a series of 2 that I've got. So this is sort of try these SaaS tools, really understand what's possible. So we really use the very latest, like Listen Labs and Outset and Maven, Code. There are so many names, right, of all these new AI tools. But the key point is I want you to experience these things firsthand and see what's possible with them, and also sort of best practices. Okay, so that's like to introduce you to what's possible. What I wanted to talk about today is my newest class that I'm running right now. That's called Agentic AI for Research, which really goes along with what we're doing. And this is where, if you would rather really understand how to build these things yourself and learn how to construct this, I find personally that I get really good work out of these SaaS products like Listen Labs or others, and we do use these globally for our major, global clients. But still, I'm like, how exactly did it get that insight? What were the steps taken? Or you might have a very custom process you need to do. You've got these PowerPoints, you've got like past deck, you've got a maybe a set of surveys that you've done, and then you've also got these interviews, and then you had like a strategic goal. And so how do you sort of put that all together? And the tools may not be designed for exactly what you need, or it might be that you can't use these SaaS products because you're doing things in banking or healthcare and it just isn't practical, and you need to build it yourself. So that's really what this is all about, is I want folks to learn what's really possible. And I am not a coder. I have a PhD in cognitive science, so I know the research, but I've been learning and just amazed at how well we can do this stuff ourselves without being coders. So just here, I can go over here just for one sec. I just feel, so what I'm going to show you today, and I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about a little more. But with something like any of these paid tools, so if it's Maze or A Great Question or Outset or Strela, take your pick. Basically it's giving you some transcripts that it's built, and then like here's the final report, and you just don't know what happened in between. So I'm going to show you how you can build sort of a step-by-step process. And then from that, the big thing that's different than if I was just chatting, so if I was over here, what I can't do is I can't have, say, 6 interviews and get 6 files out of it, take a look at those and use those in the next step, and so on. So I get byproducts, so I know what's happening at each step. Okay, that's something that's really hard to do in this. I can actually, here, if I go here, there are new ways to do this in the Claude app that are just getting started. But essentially what they've done is put a little bit of guardrails, makes sense for typical office workers, to be able, so if I'm using Claude app now on my Mac, and then there's cowork, this actually does let me, focus on a file and do some things, but it doesn't do the same things that a full-on coding tool does. And so I know this is small, but the concept is the idea here, that I want to have control and understand the byproducts of my work. So that's why I want to show you how to do this kind of thing, where I start with, say, transcripts. I get a summary of each one, so I've got the findings from each of my interviews. I then want to do something like say, okay, for my 6 interviews, what's the summary of all these together? And then if that's there, I'm like, that there's possibilities, things like it just kind of making up quotes and stuff. So I want to verify every single quote to make sure I'm comfortable. So I have a separate process just to do that. And then if I've got the findings summarized across people, and I've got the individual ones to review, and I know I've got quotes I can trust, then I can produce a final report that I really like and make it in exactly the format I want. Let's see. So Atita was asking here, let me just try and draw this out. Will I be using local LMs? I actually am just using classic Claude Code with actually Claude from the cloud. However, this is actually a good point, Atita, so I'm really glad you brought this up. So just recently, gosh, has it been a week even or 2 weeks, you've been able to use Claude Code with Ollama, for example. So you could download models using Ollama, and it works with that. So this is actually entirely possible to do locally now for like just the last few weeks. So yeah, really good point. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier, and I'm really glad you asked. Yeah, so the answer is yes, you can, and I'm just going with speed, so I'm doing it from the cloud today because I've got stuff I gathered that's not sort of client sensitive. By the way, if you are using the major groups, so this actually gets a little tricky with things like GDPR and SOC 2 and stuff like that, so compliance. So just so you know, if you're actually using the models directly from the model provider, so for example, I've hired Claude Code and I'm using it directly with Claude with an API, then I'm going straight to them and back. They're like fully compliant with these kind of rules. Same thing with the major ones like Gemini and from Google and ChatGPT, or actually Codex in our case, in doing things on the code side. So just so you know, going directly to them works. Know that if you're using something like Open Router, it can potentially go to other places, and so you just want to be careful. You can make it compliant, but to Atita's point, the safest thing to do is to run things actually right on your computer. So yeah, so the question here was just so yeah, fair enough. So just to take a step back, Claude Code is actually just a harness. So it's like a set of workflows, maybe is a way to think of it, for your brain, which is the large language model. So it turns out you can run Claude Code and have underlyingly the brain be a local one. So that could be almost anything. Or you can run it, and you really nobody has a computer powerful enough to run actually like Claude Sonnet or Claude Opus or one of these LLMs from Claude directly on their home computer. So you might use it on the cloud. So basically it's, where is your brains? Are your brains somewhere in the cloud, or are they on your computer itself? That's the concept here. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm really glad. This is why we want to, yeah, so Alex was mentioning that this is a harness, and that's just really the fancy term for a framework that keeps it running in a certain way. And there's all sorts of settings to this, and we won't get into things like their new experimental things with multi-agent processes and stuff. I'm going to try to keep it simple for our first foray here together as a group. But this is what I want to do. I want to show you how to do something like this, where you can have steps that are recognizable, have documents that are midway receivables, so you can say, is this going off the rails, or is it doing what I wanted? And then have a more trusted system and actually have it work exactly the way you would want it to work. Okay, that's the big picture idea. Okay, cool. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you are interested in this, you've taken the time to listen to me, you can go ahead and screenshot this, or you can, I guess I'm sharing the deck tomorrow, you could get it there. But this is a discount code for you to be able to get the class. So thank you for being here collectively and doing this with me. So cool. Let me keep us rolling. And so I just want to give you, so in this case, actually, you know what? It's funny. I've actually changed. I was using Cursor before, but I find actually I've been using Visual Studio Code, and actually in my class, that's what we're doing. And I think that's really the preferred setup for getting started. So some of you may be more advanced or already be doing coding, and so let me give you there's 3 levels to this, okay? So you've got something that's just a tool that makes it easier to see files on your hard drive and talk to an LLM, okay? And historically, these used to be just for writing code yourself back in 2022, but now essentially it's like, what are the files on like a list of files on your hard drive in a specific folder? Let me view one or many of those, and then let me talk to an LLM and work with the LLM, the brains behind the operation. So, so you need an app that just basically has those 3 panels. And so there's a few of these. There's Visual Studio Code, which is free, and it's available for every platform. It's been around for years. And it's by Microsoft. It's like well known. So I would encourage you to try that one first. If you've never tried, coding, like me, I had to learn these tools. So that's one of them. You might have heard of Cursor, which is really, I think it's if I just loved development, Cursor would probably be my favorite thing if I was really truly a coder, but I just use these tools for my research. The other one that's a third possibility is called anti-gravity, and it's by Google. Again, it's sort of specialized, and they're trying to get you to, use their models a little bit more to do things that are really cool. With that, you do a paid subscription. With Gemini, it's a little bit off the edge of what we're thinking. So if you are using Visual Studio Code, you can actually do really whatever you want with whatever model. So that's why I think that's the best one to get started with. So I'll just show you kind of how you do this. Alex has clearly done this more than once. And so, these are kind of clunky for us, but the reason why I don't teach you just how to use Cowork, which is that app. Okay, if you remember, let me just go back. There's so many ways to do this. So I apologize for kind of overwhelming you, but I'm trying to make sure you sort of keep track of these options. Okay, so there's a thing when I use the Claude app on my Mac called Cowork, and it's like a light version of what we're about to do. And the problem is that it just limits you in certain ways that you all as researchers would really want, like getting these byproduct files and having them easy to see and do changes in your workflow. So it's just not, it's ideal for classic office work, but it's not ideal for what we want. So it's absolutely possible to use this tool, but I think it's better and you'll get more out of it if you just go a little further and use, in this case, I've got Visual Studio Code. That's why it says code up here. Okay, so let me just try and kind of walk you through this. And so we've all gonna be cool and do dark mode because, we're programmers now. So the idea is this, that, I've set up a set of folders. So just to be clear, it's not gonna come out as big, but I can show you that, here, I just have to get myself there. Bear with me for a moment. I just want to sort of convince you that, yeah, here we go. Homework 1. Okay, start project, there. Okay, so I have on my desktop, so I know I can't zoom in on this, unfortunately, for it. Maybe like this. No, I don't have it set up. I'm sorry, I don't have accessibility set up. But I've got, basically it says 01 directive, 02 input, 03 process 1, 04 process 2. And that's exactly here, if I just close that or toggle that, that's exactly what I have here, okay? So it's just mimicking in a certain folder what are the folders or files that are visible. So if I actually toggle this guy here, there's just one file in directives. If I toggle this one file, okay, one for one. So it's just, that's the left side is just showing you what's in a local folder on your hard drive. Okay, cool, so far so good. Okay, what's happening in the center here? And you can move things around, panels all over the place. Lots of you, everyone has a different preference on how to do this, and it's really flexible. But the moral of the story is I can click on a file. Oh, sorry. Let me just, sorry, it's pulling it out in a certain place that I didn't plan to put it. So let me just do this. Just gonna close this. Okay, so it happened to have put it on the right, but I could have dragged it back here. Moral of the story is this file here is this content here. And just another thing that you've got to get used to is there's a thing called Markdown, and it's just a really simple way to do like the equivalent of HTML. So if I actually go here, I can show you the source. So the source says like number sign, interview analysis, and number sign, executive summary, and that's just secret code for like an H1, and the 2 stars on both sides is bold. So it's just it's just a formatting thing. Okay. So I'm just trying to give you a feel for getting used to it. So it's way easier to see with this. I've got an extension that makes it more readable. Okay, so I can get to files and look at them. And then obviously I've got Claude on the right here, and I can chat with Claude. And just to give you a sense here, let me just see here. Yeah, I try my best. It actually can be not necessarily because of me. So I can go ahead and make it a little bigger, but I'll do my best. Yeah, and so just to tell you, this is actually neither of those two. It's not anti-gravity, it's not Cursor, it's Visual Studio Code. So yeah, if I just here, just to be super clear, And most people would call it VS Code, Visual Studio Code. There you go. And this is by Microsoft. Okay, but turns out it's perfectly happy on a Mac in spite of all that. Okay, so, okay, let me just close this guy. I'm going to close this. Okay, so I've just got Claude here. And so the way I've set this up is I have a set of folders here designed for doing research. And so I'm just going to literally say, what is this project here? Let me actually just make sure I think about Whisperflow going. What is this project all about? Okay, so if you set it up properly, it can read the files on, and here I'm just going to say, yes, go ahead and do stuff. Okay, it can read the files on here and really kind of understand what's going on. And so I've got it structured in a way so that it can really get it, and then I'll show you what's happening. Okay, so this is an example. Here, I'll try and make it as big as I can for you. I'm going to make myself a little bigger and the screen a little bigger for you to read this. And I know it's never perfect, but I'll give you a sense. And I can actually just close this for a sec. Okay, to get it super big. Okay, so it's saying this is if it's a actually pipeline for analyzing interviews, which is correct. So really what it's doing is it's first got the raw data in a certain folder with transcripts and a strategic research brief. So I've got a 3-step process where I extract insights, I bring them together. So I do them by interview first, then I bring them together as a group, I check for the quote accuracy, and then I make a report. Of course, we could make this more sophisticated, but I'm trying to make it sort of human readable in a half an hour. So, and you can see that I've got a folder called directives, and that's the sort of orchestration of how to do things. And so there are a couple things it's doing. It's actually got a sequential pipeline, but I'm trying to do several agents running simultaneously to extract information about each interview. And it's got built-in things like hallucination checking, things like that. And then the ultimate end product is analysis, not surprisingly. Okay, so going back here just real quick, I'm going to go back to my picture because that's exactly what I've got here. So just to give you a sort of pictorial version, you've got transcripts and a sort of strategic brief of the goals of the project and the questions we asked. Then I've got source, and I've also got the source transcripts in there. And then we're going to try to find findings from each interview about the major strategic goals. And we're going to get ultimately, I have, I think, 6 interviews in there. So we're going to do 6 files here. Then in the next process, process 2, we're going to try to bring together what's common about these, what's unique about each, stuff like that. And then we're going to do process 3, which is to make sure the quotes are actually the real thing. And if they're not, fix them or kill them. And then lastly, write a report based on that. So that's the sort of big picture goal. Okay. Okay, cool. Andrew, I'm glad that you can read it better. Yeah, goal is definitely to follow. So I'll do my best to make it big. It's one of those challenges just with classic situation here of these things are designed for giant monitors. So, okay, cool. So let's go and I'm just going to show you the file system again, just to sort of remind you. So I've got one thing that's called the directive. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is my orchestration. So rather than me typing in first do this and waiting for it to be done, I'm giving it a whole sequence here. And I'll try and make this giant for you here. I'm going to get rid of this guy here. Okay, cool. So what it's saying is, so it's got a background. It's like you're analyzing interviews. And in this case, it's for what would be the ideal personal AI assistant. So going back to, I guess, what one of you started with, I think it might have been Alex, and becoming that cyborg, what could help people the most? And so it's just saying there's a folder with a research brief, and then there were transcripts in that same folder. So it looks like O2 input. So let's just make sure we believe that. So I'm going to go over here and go to O2 input. And it looks like there is a research brief. And there are, if I make this bigger, transcripts. So these are just classic text transcripts. Okay, so just trying to make sure we're sort of following what I've got. Okay, so we've got, and oops, sorry. I just need to bring us back to my plan for the so this is essentially like a research orchestration plan. So it says that we want to know people's current, this was the goals of the study, were current behaviors, pain points, how do you trust AI, and what would be the ideal assistant. So those are the big goals of the project. And it's actually noting that when I made this project, it said, oh yeah, there are a couple questions that are not directly related to that. So just letting you know, Claude. So it's almost telling itself. And then you can see for each step, I've got, the first one is this, and it says what you receive, what you're supposed to do, and what you're supposed to produce. Okay, so it's just a class, it's in words, just sort of taking it through. So, and let's see, I don't know if I can share everything because it actually is, I don't have like full open source text for you. These were done, I guess I didn't get the rights to share them publicly. So, but the concept is definitely here. And this is where literally you could just talk, I talked it through. So I didn't write this down. I said, these are the steps I need to do. So I want you to know that you're not beholden on me to share things with you. You can literally just talk it through and get it to build your orchestration layer here. And so, markdown files can be almost anything, Frank. So in this case, it is sort of it's a sequential list of to-dos essentially. And I happen to have made this one big file, but when you get much bigger, you'll have a sort of lead orchestration thing. So you know that there's about 4 steps in this process. So I could just have said there were 4 steps in this process and here are the folders. And then in another document have here's what to do for step 1, here's what to do for step 2, and so have several documents. So they're just text files. So in one case, we've got interviews. In the other case, we're going to have reports that it's going to do, also in Markdown files. It's just a very efficient way for it to not use too much context window with fancy formatting and PDF and all that kind of stuff. So this file I'm showing you, the directives, is like a long prompt. It's just a Markdown file doesn't have to be that. It's just this is the one particular one we're talking about that sort of is the brains behind the process. Okay, cool. Yeah, and yeah, so it's exactly right, Alex. Thank you. So this is actually a demonstration of both. It happens to be in Markdown style. That's why you see bullet points and stuff. But it's really instructions or standard operating procedures. That's a good way to say it. Okay, thank you for that help. Yeah, so Daniel, that's exactly what I did. I used AI to help me. I mean, obviously I know what to do for research, but I talked it through with it and got it to structure it. I reviewed it, and then I got it to make updates. And when I was happy, then I gave it a try with sample data. Yeah, so we're going to get to this in just a sec. So you're right. What I've done here, Andrew, is I made this sort of model neutral. So we're talking about Claude Code. So yes, these could actually be skills. That's probably the best way to do it exclusively in Claude. But what I was trying to do is build something so it could work in Gemini, it could work in other places in this particular case. So, so yes, I would probably have these different steps, like what each agent does as a skill for that particular agent. Fair point. Okay, good. Excellent questions along the way. Thank you. I want to make sure you're sort of riding the wave here. Okay, so just to give you a feeling, I know this is sort of a lot of scrolling because I've got it in giant font, but to give you the sense, what we're doing is in the first step, each agent gets 1 transcript. Then they are reading it and pulling out quotes and observations according to the strategic goals of this particular study. Of course, that'll be different for each one. And then it makes 1 file for that particular interview. And this tells it, do it in this format. So it'll be like, put it in the process 1 folder and say, extract dash file name like participant1.md. And so it's literally got an example right here. Okay. And then it's like, here's the format I want. So again, to Andrew's point about skills, this is where we'd include this kind of information in a skill. So this was the format I wanted it to do. I've got what I want you to do and what I don't want you to do. And then I've got step 2 and so on. So, okay, so hopefully you're getting the feel for this. You don't have to know exactly this study, but the concept is to give it pretty good guardrails on what to do. Okay, I'm just gonna, so we can kind of talk about this and do stuff, I'm gonna get it rolling. So I'm gonna say, and we'll try to make it a little faster. So I'm gonna say, use the, oh, I should have actually said this out loud. Okay, cool. I'm just going to get this rolling so it's busy thinking. And so now I actually should, I'm going to give you a split screen here. And what I want to do is close this inputs and close the directives. But what you'll see is as this starts to do stuff, it's going to start to populate files in this first process and so on. So what it's doing right now is we're getting, so you can see it literally, it's got my to-dos here. So it's extracting things from participant 1, 2, and 3 in parallel. I've got 3 different agents going, and I'll show you how to do this in a sec. But they're busy doing this together. And then the next thing is they're going to bring that together into a single file in process 2 to say the summary of this, in this case, 3 interviews. And then we're going to verify the quotes and so on. So I'm just going to keep this humming and we'll kind of come back to it. Okay, cool. Oh, sure. Yeah. Nadia, we're here to learn, of course. One sec. So let me just go ahead and go back here. And oh, okay, there we go. We got, oops, sorry, that's the directive. So I got excited. Oh, there, cool. So these are the transcripts. Okay, so we're still waiting for something from process 1. So it's still chugging away. So we might as well take a look at this while we're waiting. Okay, so what I did is I said, I want your, oh, just for 1 second, I'm going to scroll up and I promise to bring you back. Okay, so I said process each interview transcript as a separate agent. Okay, so why did I do that? With 1 transcript per agent. So first of all, I can have multiple agents going. So if I have like 90 interviews, it goes way faster, right? The other thing is that when you spin up a separate sort of sub-agent, you only, so your main orchestration agent, the main one you talk to, only has, like all of them, only have so much context window. So one advantage to using a sub-agent is they just think of it as a new person on the project. They've got a fresh memory. So that does a couple things. One is it's laser focused on, say, participant 1's data. So it's really focused. The other is it's got all of its context window to analyze stuff. So that's why I would do it. Let's see what this says. Right, each interview is a complete story, so I'm keeping it focused on 1. So just to let you know, I was debating with it, should I have 1 agent just focus on 1 strategic question and look at each interview separately? Or should I structure it so that there's 1 agent that's focused on participant 1, 1 on participant 2, and so on? And the argument that the model made was we should probably have it be 1 per interview rather than 1 per strategic goal, because we want it to follow the thread of the conversation, which might be relevant. And this is where literally we can build it both ways and test it. So, so Nadia, this was a really good point. Is a, you know, how would we structure this kind of thing? Yeah. So no, that's, hey, I want you to learn how to do this. That's why we're here. Very cool. Yeah. So. You know, it's funny, in some ways we're just, our code here is actually words, right? We don't actually have any Python scripts. We don't have any other language. We're just using words. So Tony, and yeah, my advice to you is to say, I want to create a multi-step process and I want to make sure I have interim outputs from you to know exactly how it's happening. And so, and by the way, having these separate files also helps us, right? So I can say now use, you know, these specific files to do something else. So I've sort of downsampled from 3 big interviews to 3 summaries. And so I know exactly what it's doing, right? Okay, so the guidance I'm sort of prompting is I would say, hey, ultimately I want to analyze interviews with this pipeline. I want you to have these steps. how do you propose we can do that, and what sort of interim deliverables would you recommend? So I'm literally asking it how I should do my work. And then I'm saying, well, that's great, except I really want to do it this way. So Tony, just make sure you're asking what are best practices out there, what's typical, but what might be better in my circumstance, right? So just be very picky and get it to say, here are 3 alternatives and here are the pros and cons, right? So you can really learn along the way as you're doing this, very much so. Okay, cool. Okay, quick question here, and then I'll get back to our sort of process. Giuseppe, let's see, in this tool, VS Code, every time I close in the editor or the Claude Code panel, does the chat session reset? Okay, well, this is actually exactly one of the reasons why okay, so let me first directly answer your question. So if I just close, so we've been busy crunching away over here, right, and it's churning away. Okay, if I just close this right now, and I'm actually not going to, you're right that it sort of stops the process where it is. And so there's sort of advanced things I can do, like get it to have a to-do list and check those off periodically. And so, but really I could look at the files that are in my thing here and know how far along it's gotten. So that's another advantage of getting it to do byproducts of each step. So, so Claude Code can, okay, so you can actually call up a past, here actually, just to let you know, if I get a new window here, it says past conversations, and I can actually call up an old one and start from there, just to let you know, right there on the upper right. Okay, so I'll just close this to keep it a little cleaner here. Here, I'm just gonna be really careful. Don't want to close everything. I'll tell you what, I'm just gonna bring this into this window. That'll solve our problem. Okay, cool. So really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that one of the real advantages of having subproducts to what you're doing and having it sort of check off a log of what it's doing is that you're not dependent on memory anymore. That's one of the beautiful things. So like I saw people, you know, at some of the big clients we work with carrying their laptops around terrified of shutting their laptop or having it run out of battery or driving home with it open. And so one of the goals here is to have a lot of subproducts so I can just say pick up where you left off. And so if you have a log of what you're doing and you have a sort of to-do list that it ticks off, it really doesn't matter, you know, and we can kind of pick, you can just say, hey, how far have you gotten? What else is there to do? And it can figure that out itself. So I just wanted to say you're less dependent on that a lot. Okay, you know, I happen to have done this just as a generic file, but ultimately, usually there's a thing called a Claude MD. In ChatGPT, it's called agent.md. In Gemini, it's called gemini.md. Same concept, which is just the like, what is this project all about? So it has like, what are the files in this project? What's its big goal? What are the big, you know, what are we doing? And so that's where actually I have put it in directives to be sort of like neutral to the LLM. But yeah, a lot of that would be in the Claude MD. And I think what I would really do is I would carve it up where I've got the basics of what the project is all about in that Claude MD sort of what are we talking about here thing. And then secondarily, I'd have skills for these different steps that we're doing. And so and we'll get to this, and I've got some slides on this, but skills basically say, what are you supposed to do? You can give it example files, you can give it code if it needs it, like Python scripts. So I would limit my Claude MD file to a bare minimum and then have independent skills so I could harness them in different ways. Okay, cool. Okay, so far it looks like we actually have got a couple things done. So let me just go ahead and click on one of these files. So if you remember, it actually says this is the extract from transcript 01, so the first participant. And it looks like this person uses V0 and Figma and Cursor. Cool. And so anyway, you can see that this is pulling out quotes and has an observation about that quote, and here's another one, and so on. So it's kind of going back and forth, and that's the structure we asked it for. So this is the general summary first. And I know I'm scrolling a bit, it's giant. It would be easier if on a smaller screen, or a bigger screen with smaller font. But generally what it's doing is it's saying, what were the highlights? what were the pain points, then how did they trust AI? Remember, I don't know if you remember, these were the steps I asked it to take in producing a file. And then what would be the ideal AI assistant? And the title for that part of the strategic goals was desire and delight. Okay, actually not my favorite words. I'd probably just say ideal AI assistant. But anyway, my point is that it's giving me this structure, and then what's notable about this, and contradictions and stuff. And so this is a simple process, right? I just kind of believing this agent, but logically I could have another agent say, review that and say, is there anything that it disagrees with, right? So we can have sort of a back and forth, and then have a final outcome from that. So just know that there's sort of the world is your oyster in getting like editorial review or accuracy review and things like, or like even just did it do the structure I wanted it to? In this case, it did. But know that there's lots of steps you could put in here, and I just tried to make it simpler for us to understand, with it like sort of being your first thing you're seeing. Okay, so the first thing it was supposed to do is produce these individual summaries of different interviews. Then it was supposed to bring them together. So you see this says cross-interview process. So it's saying here like some key findings and how many people this was true of, and here are some supporting quotes. This is the format that I asked it for. So it's doing that, and what are some contradictions across these people? Okay, cool. And then, so you can see I've got basically a strategic goal to find things. What's the TLDR here? How strong is the evidence? And then give me some quotes, and then tell me, what was contradictory across our participants. So, so anyway, you can see this is just 3 interviews, but if we had like 25, this would be really good, right? So that's the idea here, is that the next step in the process. So I think right now it should be, okay, it's crunching away. And right now, let's see if it's got the to-do list. Yeah, so right now it's busy verifying quotes against transcripts. So when that's done, it's going to produce something in our 3rd process, because that's step 3. Okay, cool. So hopefully you see how I'm sort of bringing this together. So let me actually just let it crunch. We got a few minutes left, so let me show you a little bit more here, just about sort of big picture things with Claude Code. So hopefully you can see that this didn't take too much. I sort of chatted my way through a process like this. And let me just give you a little bit more just sort of basic learning about this stuff too. Okay, cool. So I did happen to put this in a sort of neutral format that wasn't Claude specific, but I wanted to go ahead and let you know that you can make it very Claude specific. And these are some of the, I'll just explain, if you understand agents and subagents and skills, that's really the gold here, okay? Commands are just making it easier to launch a particular skill and stuff, but it's kind of a shortcut, so that's way less important than agents and skills. So let me just give you a sense here. So we have, right now, we really have one main orchestrator going. That's our primary agent, right? Because you always have someone you're talking to. And I'm anthropomorphizing, but bear with me. And so, but if you remember, we had different agents summarize each of the interviews, right? So each sub-agent works in isolation. So that's good. You want to give them just enough information for what they need to do well, but they aren't, for example, the interview 1 isn't influencing the analysis of interview 2, right? And also I'm like preserving my main orchestrator agent's context window so it doesn't just overwhelm its memory. So you want to kind of drive sub-agents whenever possible to help preserve that memory all the way along. So really, the idea is that sub-agents can be really specialized. So you can give them specific roles. I didn't even bother in this one, but you can say you're this kind of, and when these first started, people got into really big personas like, yeah, you're in Silicon Valley and you're a lead researcher with 15 years experience and blah, 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 blah. It's probably relevant to say you're focusing on, say, UX research or, say, quant research or something like that, just to give the LLM the sense of, here's the range of knowledge I want you to put towards this. But it can be way simpler now. And then the other piece to this, what makes an agent, is kind of that it can do things on its own. So clearly you're seeing it's doing things on its own, but also they can have different tools, right? So that would be the skills are a great example of tools, right? And another tool could be like send a file to a certain location in Google Drive, right? Or do a web search. In this case, we've got like analysis kind of things, or writing skills, or things like that. Okay. So that's our main agent is the sort of main orchestrator. All the ones that were doing those summaries were sub-agents. Okay. And someone mentioned skills. So let me just give you a sense. So a skill is really just like that. Step one, I can put into a skill pretty easily. And so it's just the idea. So one of the interesting things is you don't actually say use, you don't have to do this. I actually like to do it, but please, you sort of aren't compelled to say use the skill analysis, but you try to say something that mimics the title of it. And really this is instructions. You can give it examples, which is really, really helpful for it. Like here's a good example. Just remember, always give it good examples and bad examples, because that really helps it understand. Just like a fresh intern that walks in your office. You know, what are we going to do? Here, I want you to do this, but don't do this. And then if there were things like Python scripts, basically those things are all sort of packaged together in a skill. And, you know, Claude just chooses which ones, when they're relevant, that's that auto activation. And anyway, you can include code. We didn't include any code, and it's working great. So an example is I might have thematic analysis. So that's where I say, hey, go and look at this from a top-down perspective and a bottom-up perspective and code it, and then look at the codes you've got and bring together the themes you're finding, right? That could be a skill. Okay, so it's basically, I just want to say skills are like very much a like standard operating procedure or like getting stuff done. And so you could potentially have told the agent this is your job, but you keep these separate, and really people are focusing more on skills than they are on specific agents. The only thing that I think agents is really powerful for right now is you can say use a weaker model, so you're not burning through so many credits, for example. And another thing to say is that when you've got pretty simple process, it actually works better to use a dumber agent because it doesn't overthink it. If you're saying verify these quotes and you give it to like the highest power opus, you don't want it to like philosophically evaluate the meaning of quote. You just want it to look for the quotes on the transcript. So that's where I give it the dumbest model that works well, and it won't sort of overthink or go off the rails. Okay, so that's sort of one of the pieces of subagents was that deciding, you know, which sort of brains go behind the operation, and the skills are much more what are you doing. Okay, okay, cool. And slash commands are just that, they're shortcuts. So I have like, you know, do a thematic analysis, and it just launches the process. So if I had separate separate directives that I had, and they launched separate agents that then use separate skills, I could kind of put that all together in a package and not have to remember how to say it in words and just launch it. Okay, that's about it. I think that's and that's the point. I don't want to give you too much. So here, let me just let's go back to our friend and see how he's doing. Okay, so we actually have let's see here. Okay, we've got that done. Okay, so this is, okay, so it's actually just, it checked on the synthesis. I made this a little bit smarter. Yeah, so it's actually saying it looked through what was going on and making sure it was accurate. So this is almost, so it's sort of verifying quotes and making sure things are appropriate. And if not, it's changing them. And so it's basically, I'm going to use this in combination with the source to really do my final output. So right now, this guy should be on, yeah, he's just verifying the quotes, and then we'll get to the final output. So you can see that if you have a lot of steps in the process, it can take some time, but also I can see the sub-steps, so I really know what's happening under the hood. Okay, question. Frank, thank you for this. Yeah, Claude Code. So I'm so torn, Frank. So here, let's go back to Cowork here. So one of the things we're doing right now is we're like talking to it. We're looking at these secondary, we're looking at the sort of sub processes and studying and making sure it's appropriate. So if I was doing this all over here in Cowork, I just tell it which folder I've got, and I say, please go do blankety blank. And I'm just not seeing as much of the sub processes and So I can actually, we can give this a shot if you're interested. Let me see here. Now that's small in comparison to what we've been doing. Hold on one sec. I think I'm going off the rails here just a little. Okay, I'm getting to the very same folder, just if you're following along here. I know it's microscopic, but just bear with me. Start a project. Okay. Okay, so now, yes. Okay, cool. So now I'm in start a project just like I was before, and I'll say use the, so I can't see it right now, right? So I say use the directive in this project and analyze interviews 4 to 6. Okay, so if I really, really trust my process, that's one thing, but I'm not getting as much of what's going on or the files and stuff. It's just not as easy to work with. So technically I can do it. And actually there's even this code one that sort of mimics what VS Code does. Again, they've made it simplified, so it's a little less intimidating if you're just doing like a PowerPoint presentation. But I feel like I don't get as much knowing what's happening in here, right? So it's looking at the directives, it was looking for a Claude file, it's looking at the research brief, it's looking at these interviews. So you can see it's doing the same sort of process. It's actually working. But I just don't know, it knows there's a 4-step process, but I just don't see what's happening in the same way. So that's why, Frank, I like to do this somewhere else rather than here. So yeah, I can kind of get the news and get a little hint at what's going down, but I don't really see all the stuff under the hood. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that's why I'm trying to teach my class and teach you how to use something more like, so again, this code thing here isn't perfect either, and that's why I took you over here, because it really does too. So I don't know, actually, we'll see. It's going slow today. Okay, so now it's doing the final output. I'm sorry, I just didn't scroll enough. So, oh, okay, so we made it. So it did the quotes, and now it gave me a final document. So this is my final summary. So here, let's just get rid of this left thing to give you as much real estate as I can. So it had 3 interviews, and it's got, what the core research question was like, and the sample. And so it did a structure per what I asked it for. And I wanted to have sort of a very short executive summary. So what are the current behaviors was one strategic goal. The other was what are the pain points right now. The other was how much do people trust AI and what would it take? And then what would the ideal AI assistant be like? So really in a 1-pager, I can give people, or I can drop that in an email. That was the idea. And then I have my detailed analysis after that with like strength of evidence and quotes and all this stuff, right? So it's really similar to what I produced, if you remember, over here in the synthesis. It's just that it's now verified all the quotes, and it's got a sort of topper that's a sort of executive summary. But I can really trust it now, right? Because I've done the look at the quotes and stuff. So this is a little baby one with 3 interviews. If we had done this with 50, then it would be really helpful. So, so anyway, that's the sort of big goal. I think we're about at time. Feel free to just jump in with any questions. So ultimately, if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, I do want to share that you're very welcome to check out my class. And here, I can go back here. And yeah, there's that code one more time, just in case you want to take a look. So we just dive into much more detail in the class and go through really how to build these kind of things up, what some of the best practices are. You go from a classic flow to very sophisticated. We also show you how to use synthetic experts and synthetic agents to represent the humans there, synthetic users, and also try to put it together in sort of a serious project so you can customize the thing that you want to accomplish. Often we'll do this with interview analysis as a representative example, but you can take, the whole point is to let you take it and run with it however you choose. So I happen to be I think that Claude Code is sort of the best one to do this in right now. And so that's why I've sort of leaned that way. But I try to do my class. I know many people in their organization can only use Gemini or can only use Copilot or ChatGPT. So I try to make it sort of LLM neutral in the class, but give you that sort of sophistication of what you can do and really be able to trust the work. So going back to what we had done a second ago, oops, here, I'll just take this out of presentation mode for a sec. Hopefully you can see that when you hire a tool, so I can easily spend $20,000 on a tool and probably much more, and then it has my transcripts, and then it tells me the answers. I just don't know what happened there. And they're very good, and they're very sophisticated. And I actually interview those folks. I don't know if you know, I've got a YouTube channel where I actually interview the founders of all these major tools. But I do want to say that you, as the buyer of the tool, don't fully understand what's going on. And so this is a method to let you do that. Or if you can't use those tools because of privacy restrictions or your AI restrictions in your company, I want you to be able to do these things. So, and also just you don't, I guess, in some cases you might not have to hire this specific tool. So hopefully you're getting a sense of what that's like. And so Bill, you're welcome, man. This is the goal. So good. Yeah, I do want you to know how to get power. So this is meant to be a learning thing and not just a sales things. Yeah, Atita, you're very welcome. Thank you all for your questions too. That helped a lot. It's really makes it more fun for me, and also you're learning more. Yeah, cool, Tony. You're welcome too, of course. Yep, Vinod, I'm glad you joined me too. Okay, cool. Well, let me wind down. If you have any last questions, just dive in. I'm here just for a couple more minutes, and then I've got to go to my next meeting. But yeah, I'm glad you guys found value in this, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you do. Feel free to invite me to LinkedIn with you, and hey, I hope to see you in my class. That would be awesome. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just give you one last chance for a question or two. Any last questions? And then we'll let it go. Okay, cool.
Well, thank you so much. I think this was a very
good. Thank you very much, all of you,
small
for
lightning session,
people
but
here. So
very
cool.
useful.
All right, here, I'll keep that code up so you earned your discount. Okay, good. Okay, everyone, well, have a great rest of your day or evening, and I will hope to see you soon. Very cool. Okay, that's me back in my real life. So bye, everyone, and have a great day.